Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Brad Meltzer, who's here to share with us his new book, Make Magic, the book of inspiration you didn't know you needed. So what if the secrets to a more fulfilling life was hidden in the principles of magic? Well, today's guest is going to share with us just that. So Brad Meltzer has been on the show before. He's such a phenomenal writer. He's an Emmy-nominated #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Lightning Rod, The Escape Artist, and 11 other best-selling thrillers, with more than 11 million copies sold. He also writes nonfiction books like The Nazi Conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill FDR, Stalin, and Winston Churchill at the height of World War II, and The Ordinary People Change the World kids book series, which inspired the PBS Kids TV show Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum. He's also the host of Brad Meltzer's Lost History and Brad Meltzer's Decoded on the History Channel, and is responsible for helping find the missing 9/11 flag that the firefighters raised at Ground Zero, making national news on the 15th anniversary of 9/11. So welcome to the show, Brad Meltzer.
So good to be here.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here, Brad, and to talk about this book. I have to tell you, I got the audiobook. I have been listening to it over and over again. I'm sure many people do. What inspired you to write this book?
I went to the University of Michigan for college, and last year, Michigan asked me to be their commencement speaker. And I've done commencements before. It's all great, but the Michigan one is done in the big football stadium, 70,000 people in one space. And I didn't care about the 70,000 people. I was focused on one, my son, who was graduating Michigan that year. So there's this whole football stadium full of people, and I'm focused on the one boy in the 14th row on the aisle who's my kid. And what I wanted to talk about that day and what I spoke about was magic and how to actually make magic. And that sounds silly because, of course, magic doesn't exist, but there are things that science and math can't explain. And when you talk to magicians, that they'll tell you that there are only 4 types of magic tricks. And you put aside illusions and escapes, there's just 4 types of tricks. 1, you make something appear. 2, you make something disappear. 3, you make 2 things switch places. And 4, you take one thing and you turn it into something else, which is the hardest trick of all, transformation. And I went through all the magic tricks. I gave my speech. My kids were happy, which is always, you never know if they're worried I'm going to embarrass them. But what happened is a whole stadium of people, all these people started writing me and saying, can I have a copy of the text of your speech? I want to give my kids the text of your speech. I want to give my grandkids the text of your speech. In fact, someone tracked down my sister and said, I saw your brother in a stadium today. I think you know him. Like, can you get the text of that speech for us? I've been doing this 27 years. No one's ever asked me for the text of anything I've ever worked on. And then publishers started calling, and Katie Couric blasted it out there. And all these people, I don't know Katie Couric, I don't know all these famous people, but they started putting it out there. And anyway, they said we should probably do a book on this. And that's where the book Make Magic was born.
Well, I'm so glad that this book has come into being, and I know you were really focused on magic, and of course your son. What a great time that was. Was there a core message that you wanted to impart on the entire stadium?
Well, what I really want to do is show people their own power. And let's start with each of the tricks. So the first trick is, what do you make appear? And what you have to make appear is you. And I'm talking about the best version of you. We're all chameleons. We act one way with our family, another way with our friends. But there are those people that know the real you, that love you for who you are, where you don't judge what you're about to say, and they just adore you for whatever you are. And I can tell you that when I was graduated college, I went to work at this job in Boston, and my boss left the job just as I got there. It was a disaster. And I thought I wrecked my life. So that night, when I found that he was leaving, I was in a sports bar. I banged the table. I told my girlfriend at the time, I know what I'm going to do with this year. I said, I'm going to write a novel. And she didn't laugh. She said, go write your novel. And that girlfriend gave me lift. She believed in that version of me. And that's the reason I was able to write that novel. When I wrote that novel, it got 24 rejection letters. There were only 20 publishers, and I got 24 rejection letters, which means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. But when I said, if they don't like that book, I'm going to write another. And if they don't like that book, I'm going to write another. And the week after I got my 23rd and 24th rejection letter, I started my next book. And my girlfriend said, you should write that too. She believed in that version of me. And there's social scientists will tell you, it's called your reflective best self-portrait. When someone you trust tells you you can be a certain person, that they believe in that version of you, you will actually become that person. And what our job is to find those people who give us lift. And that was the first magic trick that I wanted to give out there.
Was there another time in your life that you used the principles of magic to transform something?
Yeah. So, the second magic trick is what you make disappear. And everyone wants to make fear disappear, get rid of your fears. But I want to challenge that. So, what I can tell you, when I was in high school, to make money for I needed money. For 4 years, I worked scooping ice cream at the Haagen-Dazs in the Aventura Mall. And I remember this one day, this woman came up, this customer, she started snapping her fingers at me. She's like, you got to serve me. I said, ma'am, I'll be right with you. She said, no, you got to serve me now. And I said, you know what, ma'am, you're being rude. I'm not serving you. And she started screaming in my face. I'll never forget it. You're going to be working at this miserable ice cream store for the rest of your miserable life. And I said to her very calmly, ma'am, if I am working here for the rest of my miserable life, you're still never getting any ice cream. And I used to tell that story laughing, saying, oh, it never bothered me. But Marianne, I have to admit, it did bother me. It really upset me because my dad always struggled with money. And it made me feel like I was going to have that same struggle my dad was having. But what I also realized is that woman, that customer, she drove me. She fueled me. And that's what you have to do, is not make your fear disappear, but you have to use your fear and harness it. Don't try to vanquish your critics, prove them wrong.
Well, you started off at an early age with a really good comeback, so.
It is, I will tell you, I'm one of those people who, like, especially because I'm a writer, I don't ever think of the comeback in the moment. I always think of it like 2 days later, I'm in the shower and I'm having the fight in my head. And then I'm like, oh, I wish I said this. It's maybe the only time in my entire life where I had the right comeback. So that's why it's an important story for me.
Well, and I think it also touches on something that I know you as a person and just your work really focuses on is kindness. And my goodness, couldn't we use more of that now? And I think with people, reading Make Magic helps them get to a place where maybe they'll have a little bit more compassion for somebody else.
Well, now let's talk about the most important trick, right? It's the third magic trick. And that is, you take one thing and you make it switch places with another. And here, let's talk about empathy, because that's what empathy is, right? It's switching places with someone else and putting yourself in their shoes. And I can tell you that when I was 13 years old, my dad lost his job. And we had to move. He had no money, so we had to move down to Florida because my grandparents lived there, and he could stay with them for free. And there were all of us. My family of four, my two grandparents, my mom, my dad, my sister, myself, and two grandparents lived in a one-bedroom apartment. It was not a great living situation. Everyone in the building was trying to get us evicted. They were all like, "You got to get out of here." Too many people in one small space. And this one neighbor, directly across the hall from my grandmother, came to my grandmother and said, why don't you use my apartment? Take my apartment. I'm going to move out and you take mine. And what she was really trying to do was give my family some space and make sure we weren't going to be evicted. Back then, I remember her name was Mircy, but as a kid, I always heard her name as Mercy. And make no mistake, mercy and empathy is what she showed us. And today, cruelty and venom and harshly judging those we disagree with, it's become sport in our culture. But cruelty and venom aren't signs of strength. They're signs of weakness and petty insecurity. What takes strength is showing empathy and showing kindness to people. And when I said those words in the stadium, I could feel the whole stadium react. And I said, what? I made a mental note. I was like, what just happened here? And my wife said, you hit a vein you didn't know was there. And I think right now as a culture, we're starving for empathy. We're starving for kindness. It's why this book, Make Magic, it is the ultimate graduation gift. Or, the title of the book is The Book of Inspiration You Didn't Know You Needed. So anyone who needs inspiration out there, that's what Make Magic is there for. So you can give them that gift book.
I understand that this book is also affectionately known as the Little Book of Hope, and rightfully so. What a beautiful gift to give someone, especially during these challenging times. In that same spirit, how do you see people coming into contact with your work, much like they did at the stadium, and what kind of impact is that having?
You know, I I don't ever plan on, let me say this, and I hope people will come into contact and learn from me. I don't. What I do is I know one thing. I'm not that special. What you're hearing is my own struggles, my own worries, how I feel about the universe. My wife, when I was struggling trying to write the speech and saying, what do I make appear? What should I make disappear? What should I fill it in with? She finally calmed me down and said, listen, just write your best answers for your son. Give him the best advice you have in life. And the one thing I know, again, I'm not that special. If I want my son to find empathy, if I want my daughter to find empathy, if I want my kids to put aside their fear and use it, like I know that there are so many people out there that want the same for their family members and their loved ones. And I think it's never a plan. It just, I just feel like I've been lucky enough that people have been able to hear what I've written and then they just react the same way I do, which is we love our kids and we want the best for them.
I think we also really want a world where people are more compassionate and empathetic to one another.
I mean, especially now. I mean, the thing, the last trick is the one where you take one thing and you turn it into something else. The hardest trick of all, which is transformation. And I think that's where we're kind of stuck as a culture right now. It's right now, it's easy to get stuck in our ways of thinking, especially as we get older. But if you keep thinking in just your way of thinking is right, then things become hard and they become brittle. Instead of writing in pen, write in pencil and be unafraid in life to use the eraser. The person who says that they're the smartest in the room is not the smartest in the room. That's just the one with the most fragile ego. The most sophisticated people I know are the ones who know there's always more to learn. And we should never stop changing. And the beauty of that, and again, just going back to the science of it, right? When we get a lot of bad news, we shut down. We swipe to a new website, we shut off the TV, we shut down. But we can't shut down. We need everyone right now. That's how the world gets to be better. But the good news of it, the science of it is empathy and kindness, they're malleable. They're malleable. You can affect them. Yes, we shut down when we're overwhelmed. But if you want to have more empathy and transform, all you have to do is want to have more empathy. And it's like when you're a freshman in college, that's when you make the most new friends. Why? Because you're just open to making the most new friends. And that transformation of always learning and always evolving, the only immutable fact is you should never be immutable.
Wow, what an important message. I can only imagine how you felt being there, giving that commencement speech, and having this audience really resonate with what you're saying in such a deep and profound way. I mean, what are some ways that our listeners can embrace their own unique magic? And I know we've gone over the four, but what would you suggest?
I think you have to be open to magic. I know that sounds almost like new agey, but the only people who ever see magic are those who look for it. And I think, I don't think magic is, this big item that has to, the world, the waters have to part and you walk through the Red Sea. Magic is everywhere, right? Like learning the Uber driver's name is magic. Or if you're nice to me and you're a jerk to the waiter, you're a jerk, right? So just being nice to people is magic. Liking other people's dogs, that's magic to me also. I remember a few months ago, I had this thing where they were worried about the doctor saw something in my health and they were like, oh, we got to send you for a test. And they were like, we got to figure out if you have this they worried about this really terrible thing for me, and thank God I didn't have it. But when you spend that whatever couple hours worrying that these may be your last hours on the planet, everything becomes magical. It's this great kind of Buddhist tradition. They said, if you really want to experience the world as magic, add these words to whatever you're doing. This is the last time I will. So we take all these things for granted, but if you say this is even when you're cleaning up your dog's poop, this will be the last time I ever clean up my dog's poop, I promise you, it'll suddenly become a bit more special than just yet another time. And we have to bring that kind of brain power, that perspective into our everyday lives. That's how you make actual magic.
Well, Brad, you're always such a big inspiration, definitely one in my life, and I'm always cheering you on. Where can our readers and our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and not learn just only about just make magic because you are such a great writer, but all of your other books as well?
Sure, you can go to bradmeltzer.com. It's like seltzer that you drink, but with an M like Mary. And you can find me at Brad Meltzer on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else that you would go to find any social thing. But I will say, I also hope you come and say hello. Like, I like when people say hello. I like when they tell me they came through you. That's fun to me. So I'm looking forward to getting even and interacting with even more people. So I appreciate that and appreciate you, that whether I'm doing thrillers or kids books or history books or inspirational books like this, you've always been there to support us, Marianne. So I appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you, Brad. I so appreciate you taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you.
Make sure to visit Brad's website at bradmeltzer.com for more information on his books and also be part of his community. Make sure to sign up for his newsletter. Make Magic is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. And they also have this book on Audible. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.